Welcome to the Women's Heart Health Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Menolascino, Medical Director of the Meno Clinic Center for Functional Medicine in beautiful Jackson Hole. This is your chance to hear from international experts to optimize your personal health, but also to prevent any problems with your heart health. Today, we're incredibly fortunate to be joined by Dr. Alejandro Junger. He's an author, he's a lecturer, international physician, one of my good friends that I trust implicitly. And I think we're very fortunate to have him join us here today. Welcome, Alejandro.
Thank you for that intro.
I'd like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind. Dr. Junger is the New York Times best-selling author of Clean and Clean Gut. He completed his training in internal medicine at New York University Downtown Hospital and his fellowship in cardiology at Lenox Hill Hospital. After his medical training, he studied Eastern medicine in India, and he's done quite a bit of volunteer work there as well. Dr. Junger is also the founder of Clean, a wellness company that helps people live healthier lives by guiding them through targeted programs of cleansing, of detox, of optimal vitality. He lives in Venice, California, in LA, with his 3 children who I've met in this real oasis with fruit trees, beautiful gardens, and he's one of the doctors that really walks the walk and talks the talk. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Well, you know, you have such a wealth of background as a physician, as a cardiologist, with your Eastern medicine training. And I think you have an insight for women's health overall that a lot of other doctors don't. When you have women come to see you, Alejandro, what's kind of your first way to decide where you're going to go first? Do you look at the gut? Do you look at hormones? Do you look at toxicity? Is it different for everyone? What's kind of your roadmap of how to engage with someone new?
Well, it is different for everyone because obviously every person is an individual and there's no 2 people that are the same, right? But having said that, there's something that is the same for everybody, which is we're all living in this modern world, which is very detached from the way that nature designed us to be. And we all have a few things in common, right? We're all exposed to lots of toxic chemicals. We are all walking around with a certain degree of gut disrepair or gut damage. So with those things in mind, generally when I see somebody, the first thing I do is try to determine how toxic or how exposed to toxins they are, and what is the toxin overload that they carry, and how has this affected their gut. And therefore, I try to correct that to begin with. And when I do that, many of the problems that people come to see me with either resolve or greatly improve.
Is there a common theme that you see for most of your clients, particularly for women, of the gut dysfunction? Is it food sensitivities? Is it parasites, candida? Is there a common theme, or is it a little bit of everything?
It is a little bit of everything, but it all ends up causing something very similar, which is a hyperpermeability or leaky gut to some degree, right? So whether it's because of dysbiosis, whether it's because of changes in other aspects like pH or whether it's constipation, they all end up causing a certain degree of hyperpermeability and therefore inflammation, because 80% of our immune system is within and around the intestines, and also there's a huge nervous system around the intestines that is in charge, amongst other things, of producing up to 80 to 90% of the serotonin and other neurotransmitters that are so linked to the way we feel and the level and our levels of vitality. So yeah, there are many ways of going to Rome, but once you're there, you know, you're dealing with the same things.
Well, you're tying the gut to mood, and I think a lot of people are surprised at the serotonin production of the gut. And really, it's our second brain. And were you taught much about the gut-heart connection in cardiology training? Did they even talk about it?
It is a second brain in terms of the chronology in which we started talking about them. But if you talk about the size, it is the first brain in a way, because there's more neurons within and around the gut than in our skull. So depending on how you look at it, it's a very important brain, as it were. And when I was in medical school, nobody talked about the connection between the gut and the heart, or the gut and anything else. I haven't been to medical school for a while, but I guess
it hasn't changed.
my guess is that they should be changing, or probably some medical schools are catching up and teaching about this connection.
We talked to a friend of ours, Dr. Rupi in London, who did some teaching actually for medical students. And it was interesting hearing him talk about the National Health Service in England, and how they're even more limited than our doctors are here in the States, with doctors in the insurance model seeing patients every 7 minutes and that routine. There's even more limited resources there, which is actually interesting because it forces the doctor to rely on some of this natural wisdom that's been consistently proven through the last 100 years. So I know you've gone to India, looked at the Eastern medicines. There's some truisms that have been true all through evolution of health and medicine. Are there some that you saw there in India that you brought back, or things you saw here that you saw different patterns there?
I try to boil down things to an easy way of understanding, right?
Right.
And what I see and what I understand, the way I look at it, is that we are animals. Human beings are part of the fauna and flora of the planet, and in a way we were designed by this higher intelligence. Call it God, call it nature, call it whatever you want. But there is something in common, which is we were all created and designed to live according to certain rules and certain environmental conditions, right? And when you look at the animals around the planet that are living in the way that nature designed them to live, you don't see any chronic diseases. These animals are roaming around, are eating whatever nature designed them to eat according to their geography and the season in which they find themselves, and they find food and they eat it, and then they don't find it and they fast. So they're feasting and fasting intermittently by design. But we as a species, and also a few animals that we have living with us, have departed from these ways, from the ways of nature. And this departure has put us in such unnatural conditions, and not only the things that we eat, but the frequency with which we eat, the combination of things that we eat, the quantity of things that we eat, and all the chemicals that we add to the things we eat, because we're not eating food anymore, we're eating edible products. All these things end up creating such a shock to our system that ends up causing a certain level of inflammation, which we all know now is the beginning and the common factor to all chronic diseases, whether it's heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, whatever whatever chronic disease you talk about. If you start thinking on looking at when and where did it start, it started many, many years before, probably in the gut, and by turning on the inflammatory system.
Well, I heard you talk about inflammation 20 years ago, and it's really tying everything together, is this inflammatory process driving this chronic illness. Alejandro, you're talking about leaky gut, and we were speaking to Dr. Joel Kahn the other day about how this leaky gut, leaky brain barrier, blood-brain barrier, and leaky endothelium of the heart, this these membranes that protect the gut, protect the brain, protect the heart blood vessels, all have this same vulnerability to inflammation. Is that a common thread between the three possibly?
Sure. Listen, the body has these barriers to protect itself from the outside world. Yeah? One of the most common ones, which we are all familiar with, is our skin. Yeah? And the skin is intact. Now imagine if there's little holes in the skin, and the bacteria and the viruses that we're exposed to start getting into our system and start activating all kinds of inflammatory reactions, and there will be little pus, pustules everywhere, and there will be inflammation and fissures. And now that doesn't happen usually in our skin, except to some people, right? But your gut is really skin turned inside out.
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy.
So the gut should be like a part of your skin, right? And it should be intact and protecting from anything going into the system. Now, that is what is most affected in people. I call the gut our Achilles heel of disease. That's our weakest point as a species in the way that we live today, and how disease begins.
And as we depart further and further from whole foods and get more chemical-laden food, more processed food, more food additives, that barrier becomes more vulnerable. Is that correct?
That, yeah, obviously, and there's all kinds of chemicals that puncture this skin, right? And the bacteria and viruses and fungus and all kinds of organisms that take residence there also start creating all kinds of reactions. And one thing that is important to understand is that the body is not designed. There is no genetic information on how to get sick. Everything that we see and we understand and interpret as sickness is really actually a adaptation and survival mechanism. And when that turns into disease, it's because this adaptation survival mechanism has been there for too long. And specifically to heart disease, I'll tell you how I look at it. Coronary artery disease is one of the biggest killers of people in the United States and probably around the world. Now, what is coronary artery disease, right? It's the artery, and the wall of the artery starts getting irritated, and there's little fissures that start to appear. And the body, as an adaptation and survival mechanism, starts patching those fissures with whatever it has in hand, which in our biology, it's cholesterol, right? Just like when you cut yourself, there's a crust that grows. Under the crust, the skin starts repairing itself. Then the crust falls, and the skin is intact. Now imagine if the insult is continuously there. You keep on scratching, that fissure will never, that skin will never heal itself. In the same way, the artery starts patching the fissures with cholesterol. Under the cholesterol, the artery is repairing itself. And if the insult stops, the repairing mechanism will be reabsorbed, and the wall of the artery would be intact again. Now, because the insult is always there, whether it's smoking, whether it's diabetes, whether it's high blood pressure, stress, whatever it is that caused that fissure in the first place, it's continually there. The artery continues to try to be repaired with more cholesterol, until at one point the cholesterol becomes thick and it starts impeding, it starts obstructing the flow of blood, right? So it is not a disease. It's a survival mechanism that's been there for too long. That's how I look at it.
Alejandro, every time you and I have a conversation, the way you explain things, I love it. You go back to this innate knowledge all of us have in our bodies, that our bodies want to do well. They want to adapt healthy. It's the things that we do to them that creates this dysfunctional response, right?
I go even further. It's not that it wants to. It's the only thing it knows how to do.
Oh, that's great.
It's designed to adapt and survive. And that's what it's trying to do constantly. Now, sometimes our adaptation mechanisms are there for too long. Inflammation is the same thing. Inflammation is not an enemy. Without inflammation, we would die. It's inflammation. If you know the physiologic pathway, the biochemical pathway of inflammation, it's very similar to coagulation. Yes. In fact, they have a crossover. Certain coagulatory factors are also inflammatory factors, right? So this chain of reaction of coagulation is a survival mechanism.
What makes blood clots? Yeah.
What makes blood clots? It's a survival mechanism.
Yes.
Now, if something gets punctured and starts bleeding, coagulation will stop the bleeding and will save your life. Now, after the repair is done, then the coagulation stops. But if coagulation becomes not localized but systemic, it'll kill you, because you can't have clotted blood all over your arteries. Inflammation is the same thing. Inflammation is a survival mechanism that is triggered by the body to deal with a certain problem, and then when the problem is solved, then the inflammatory process, it's turned off. Now, if inflammation becomes systemic, it's a little similar to coagulation becoming systemic, and that is what leads to chronic diseases and eventually death.
Well, this adaptation response, by sheer coincidence, Alejandro, on Monday, 2 days ago, one of my clients brought in an article that you wrote on adrenals. And this adaptation to stress. Stress is actually, some stress is good. It's our chronic stress and our adaptation that is bad. Can you share a little bit with us how you explain it to people and how you think of that? And a little bit's good, just like we talked about coagulation, inflammation. We need a little bit at times. It's when it runs rampant.
Imagine a wild hare running in the, or a moose that you were talking about before, that they were eating the fruits outside the school, and the kids couldn't go to school in front of your clinic. Imagine these moose running wild, and they're calm, and they're just attentive to their atmosphere and the environment, and then suddenly a mountain lion appears. They turn on this stress response, their adrenaline starts pumping, they run, and that's how they're able to escape, right, and survive. Then afterwards, when they escape, when they're free, this turns off, and they continue to roam and look for food. We are in the same way designed to be able to trigger these stress responses, which are a way in which we survive. But the problem is, in modern life, these stress responses are constantly turned on, just like inflammation is constantly turned on. And these adaptation and survival mechanisms that are turned on for too long end up causing problems.
How do you tie that overactive or over turned on adrenals to the gut, the relationship of the adrenal to the gut, especially for women?
So I don't distinguish between women and men as much, except when I talk about, the hormones, female hormones, male hormones. That's in my mind, that's the main distinction, because in every other sense, we work in a similar way. Good right? Point. And the thing is this, our body has a certain amount of energy to expend every day. It's like a bank account. So you have a 10% is spent in thinking processes. 20% is spent in physical activity. You're walking around, you're doing your stuff. 20% is spent in digesting food every day. 10% is spent in minor repair things of, the wear and tear and cells that shed and others have to be created. So, but what happens is that when any system is taking too much of that energy, right? Let's say digestion, it should be 20% of the energy of the day, right? And then when you finish your day, you spend all your energy, you have to go to sleep in order to recharge and start the next day. But let's say instead of 20%, you're digesting so much because you're eating now 6 times a day, which is completely unnatural, right? And you're digesting, and when you're digesting, energy levels go down. I mean, after you stuff your face during Thanksgiving, you cannot even think. You have to go to sleep, right? Yeah, people call it the alkaline wave or whatever, but that's just the explanation of what ends up happening. Is that the digestive system is taking too much energy, and therefore it has to. The body has to save from other systems that cannot use whatever was allocated to them, right? So it's the same thing with everything. If there's something that's going on, let's say there's an inflammatory system that's being turned on, and there's a stress response that's being turned on, and it's consuming more of the energy, then there's going to be less energy for detoxification, for cell repair, and that ends up causing damage wherever the repair needs to be done. And for a lot of people, it's in the gut. So the gut suffers when the stress levels are so high that the adrenals get exhausted because the energy needed for repair is just not there.
I love that concept of energy currencies. You have only so much for each section, and the digestive tract cells turn over every 3 days, right? And so that's a huge amount of energy that part of your body needs to turn. They have to rebuild the gut every 3 days, essentially. That's a huge energy currency that they use. And if it's spent the wrong way, the thing I think about for women is a lot of women with this chronic stress have female hormone imbalances. And it's kind of goes back to when we're cavemen and women, that your body doesn't care if you can reproduce if you can't run from a saber-toothed tiger. So we talk about this concept of cortisol steal, which I know there's some controversy about, the idea that if your adrenals are stressed, you'll pull the other hormones in. Do you see that as a real concept, or how do you explain that to people?
Well, think about this very well-known phenomena, that is that marathon runner women, they end up stopping menstruating.
Yes.
Why is that? Because they're expending so much energy in physical activity that there's less energy left to manufacture hormones and prepare the body for menstruation. But actually, it's not preparing for menstruation. It's preparing for childbearing, right? Yes. For pregnancy. So yes, inflammation, stress, all these things end up causing the women's bodies not to be optimal for reproduction, right? And what I see is that when you start, recharging the adrenals and repairing the gut and putting things back into normal, everything starts balancing itself, and women get pregnant right away. The body doesn't want to put something so important as new life, right? Which is what the species depends on, at risk if there's so many other things going on. So it shuts down that system.
Well, I like the analogy, you have to have the nest healthy before you can put an egg in it.
Exactly.
And we see this a lot in Jackson Hole with extreme athletes, that the young girls, they don't even have a period, or they start and then stop. And women have all kinds of hormone symptoms, PMS and early.
Exactly. And in that case is because they're expending so much energy in physical activity, which we view as something really good and healthy, and positive. But imagine that you're expending so much energy in other things. It's the same thing. It's lack of the energy necessary to prepare the body for such an important activity, which is reproduction.
I love your analogy of this savings account and this energy currency, and that you've you only have so much of it. And, our normal inclination is when we feel good, we do 120% rather than do the 90% and put some back in reserve.
Yeah, this concept of modern life, that more is better, and everybody wants to be the good business person, a good athlete, a good son, a good father, a good everything has to be done well, and instead of exercising half an hour, they have to exercise 2 hours, and then then the system crashes.
How do you teach your clients to have that balance, or to think about this savings account or currency? Do you have them keep logs or journals, or are there some simple things you can tell them to help them get started?
That's a really good question, because it all depends. For a lot of people, life is just so busy that even though you tell them these things and they make sense, people don't do it. The people that I find end up following this kind of advice are the people that get an eviction notice. What I call an eviction notice is I see the body as this apartment, this house that you're renting for this 80, 90 years on earth, right? And if you suddenly get an early eviction notice with it's cancer or it's heart disease or whatever it is, right? Then people stop and I'm ready to do whatever it is. But for the common patient, it's a hard thing to teach. Maybe you should tell me how you do it.
Well, I do think that, as you say, and one of the things I love about how you write, Alejandro, how you speak, how you communicate, is you really make difficult things simple. And I think the wisest of our practitioners have this wisdom of experience where they're able to use all of those experiences to break it down for each individual. You kind of have a sense of what's going to work. It's kind of like when someone wants to quit smoking. There's this pre-contemplation phase, this contemplation phase, this idea that you've got to want to change first. And I know a lot of practitioners, that's the first thing they ask is, are you ready to do the work? And you could give people all the lab tests, all the information if they're not ready. And I find, a lot of us, probably all of us that are in integrative functional medicine, we've had a life experience, either for ourselves, a family member, a loved one, where we needed to go beyond just medications or look beyond traditional medicine to look at other solutions. And so I think people come to us a little bit ready to change. And that's one of the first questions I ask is, are you ready? But I don't want to make the first couple steps too hard, because if people get a little bit of success, then they're ready to do the heavy lifting. But if you tell them,
the thing is this, I realized a long time ago that when you start talking to people about life changes and long-term changes, a lot of people get scared and they get overwhelmed. So what I do is I either put them on a 1 week or a 3 week program, and I said, just do this.
Smart, nice and simple.
Do this well, and then we'll talk. And if you don't like what you see, you just go back to doing exactly what you were doing, right? So people can grasp that 1 week, 10 days, 21 days, right? Then the thing is that you give people what they want in the hope that eventually they want what you really have to give them.
Great.
So I give them a week, I show them results, and then people feel so well that very few want to go back to exactly what they were doing before, right? And that's the reason I created this 21-day cleanse detox program that is so successful, and it's become well known all over the world. My book that describes this program has been translated to 23 or 24 languages around the world, and I get emails from all over the world telling me how just doing that showed them something so amazing that then less people want to go back to what they were doing before.
Well, that's the pain point, is that everybody has this pain point of why they want to change for themselves, for their partner, for their kids. We talk about anti-aging, and, it's not so much about living to 120. It's about being active and skiing with your kids at 85 and being as vital at every year that you can. And I think that's, you make such a good point. When you give people a little bit of success, then they're willing to do maybe some heavier lifting too, or they don't want to go backwards. They like to feel good. I think the body likes that feeling.
Yes.
And the 21 day is kind of enough to make a change, but not so long that you get kind of lost in it. So that 14 to 21 days is a good number.
21 days can transform your life.
You've seen it, haven't you?
I see it every day. Every day. I see it every day. Of the people that do the 21 day, some of them change so much that they even change their careers and they become health coaches and wellness professionals. So it's really, because they want to share now this newfound energy and mental clarity and everything. Yeah.
And there's something about the group when people do it with someone else, that motivation they have to work with a partner to help, or in a small group. There's something beautiful about this, the social aspect of health transformation, the group visits, the small group detox. Do you really see that as being a good binder for people too?
I see that as fundamental in life, in everything we do, not only in wellness programs, in work, in raising kids in a community is much better than raising kids on your own. I see that in everything. When you do things as a group, you always get better results, especially in health transforming programs. In
life, in love, and in health, the social bond is crucial, isn't it?
Listen, we are social beings and we function better when we are in community.
And you see that zip and zest and just passion for life just blossom in these clients?
Yeah, listen, what is the first thing that you want to do when you either see something or try something or feel something that's amazing?
You share it.
You want to share it, right?
That's an exciting way to do it. Where do you see heart health moving to next, Alejandro? We have these high-tech tools that if you have a heart attack, they can put a balloon and open it up. There's big controversy on the medications. We're now moving into the natural. Where do you see cardiology? Where do you see heart health moving next? Do you have a vision for that?
I have a bigger vision than that. My vision is that eventually the future of medicine is no medicine, because we will somehow learn to recreate the natural laws of how we were designed to live, and in that case we won't need medicine anymore, unless it's a broken bone because you jump too high when you go skiing and you fall and you break a bone, or you tore a ligament. That kind of thing is going to be inevitable, right? But the chronic diseases, in my vision, and I don't know, this is 20 years, 40 years, 100 years, but whenever it is, right? That's what I point at. That eventually we won't need all this high-tech stuff, because we won't be triggering inflammatory processes and other survival mechanisms that will end up making us sick. So that's the way I look at it and think about it.
And that's really what we all should be striving to, is to create in our own lives those patterns that don't drive that illness behavior, but drive that wellness behavior.
Yeah, we're a little bit far away from that, but in the meantime, thank God for all the technology and the cardiac catheterizations and the valve
absolutely
exchanges that we can have, and thank God for all of that.
When I was in residency 20 years ago, there was I saw a heart transplant, and the heart transplant took 16 hours. One of my patients had a heart transplant. I saw him as for nutrition follow-up. He had a heart transplant 6 months ago. It took 4 hours, really only 3.5. The surgeon had a golf time at 1 o'clock, so he started the surgery at 8 and still made his golf time.
Yeah,
so the progress is amazing in good medicine.
And you leave the hospital 5 days later. It's incredible. Yeah.
But your first meal
but
still is bacon and eggs.
yeah, but see, even though I'm grateful for all of that, and I'm actually going to be needing it myself because I had a car accident and the impact in my chest tore one of my valves,
Wow.
the aortic valve. So my aortic valve now is regurgitates, is insufficient. So eventually I'm going to have to have a valve exchange, right? So you know, I'm really grateful for all of that, right? But I try to not focus on that. I try to focus on well, how do we keep people out of the hospital? How do we avoid having to use this amazing technology that we have?
And are there supplements for the heart that you feel are kind of go-to? What foods do you love to recommend for heart health? What supplements do you like to recommend? I know it's not one size fits all, but you have some go-tos in foods and in.
But yeah, listen, magnesium is a supplement that I recommend to a lot of people. Everybody needs it because everybody's deficient on it, and it has a lot of implications in terms of heart health. Vitamin D is another supplement that is important. But there are CoQ10 is a really useful supplement. You know, when talking about heart health, but more than specifically for heart health, whatever it is that reduces or avoids inflammation, that is going to be really important for heart health as well, such as turmeric and you know and other things like people that are adrenally exhausted. They need you know I realized that adrenal exhaustion, one of the things that it causes is arrhythmias. People that have a intermittent atrial fibrillation can go into atrial fibrillation when adrenally exhausted, and then once you build it up, then they go back into sinus rhythm. I've seen that a few times, and there's no medical studies that I found to prove this, but these are things that I've observed myself. So any supplement that is used for general health will end up benefiting heart health, right? Because nothing is separated in the body. Everything is interconnected.
Well, you know, that's a great point. And we talked about this adrenal exhaustion. When I was doing my master's in pharmacology, we looked at the heart rate variability, how each beat is variable in its timing. And when that variability is really set and not variable, that's what you see in people with depression. And as the depression clears, the variability gets more variable. And so there's something about this autonomic connection to the heart and the adrenal that ties together mood and ties together heart health. And do you believe, Alejandro, that you can die of a broken heart?
I don't only believe, I know you can. You know, I've seen it myself. I've almost died myself of a broken heart. And you know, this is something that in Eastern medicine, it's as believable and as known as that there is a blood pressure and you know and things like that. Yeah, no, for sure.
Can you share with us in the Eastern medicine how the heart is viewed and how, with your experiences and training and knowledge base, how do you see it differently than your cardiology peers would?
Well, it's a very interesting question because there's
and thank you for answering it in advance. I know it's a tricky question. Thank you.
Well, it's not tricky. It's just a big question, and we can spend a few hours talking about it, right? But I'm gonna touch on something that I find really interesting. That the heart in Eastern medicine, and of course in the West also, there's a lot of awareness about this, is actually considered the center of wisdom. And the place where real intuition comes from, and connect and a higher connection. And just like there's a nervous system in the skull, and there's a nervous system in the gut, there's a nervous system within and around the heart. Now we only think of it as the nervous system that causes contraction, which is the one that you see on an electrocardiogram. An electrocardiogram is really measuring the electrical activity of your heart in terms of how it makes the cells contract and makes the heart beat. But this nervous system also has other functions, higher functions of higher intelligence, and that is how it's thought of also in Eastern medicine and Eastern philosophies, right? So there's so much more to the heart than we are used to think of it. We think of cholesterol and high blood pressure and how it pumps and all the mechanical aspect of the valves and stuff. And yeah, and all that is really important, because when that doesn't work, then big problems arise, right? But there's a much bigger, or there's a different level of heart functions, right? And I always talk about this heart surgeon that after heart transplants realized that some of the people that got hearts from deceased end up having memories and remembering things or knowing things that the deceased, the donor, knew, right? So some of that intelligence during the transplant is transplanted also to the receiver, right? So there's a lot of things about the heart that we still don't understand, and
that's a great observation. And even people pick up habits and start new hobbies that the person whose heart came from, and they have no idea with what you just said. They have no knowledge of what this person was like or what their hobbies and habits were, and they suddenly pick them up. And when it's found out, or they get a chance to meet family members of the donor, they find these things out, and it's not a coincidence.
No, definitely
The energy and the love of the heart. We think it's such a mechanical box, just like we do the brain, but it's beautiful energy.
It's a brain around the heart that you're also putting in, right? And as a brain, it comes with a lot of other things, memories, imagination, creativity, connections.
Well, I think all of us had that experience in high school physics where we took a magnet with a South Pole and a North Pole and sprinkled iron filings around it, and it made these perfect circles, the magnetic field of that magnet. Well, we know the Earth has the same magnetic field, and our heart creates that same magnetic field every heartbeat, correct? And then maybe those interfaces of those energy, why we can be connected to someone when we first meet them, or be not connected to them. And do you think you can change that heart energy or adjust it based on how the gut is doing, the adrenals are doing?
Well, definitely,
toxicity.
Definitely, there's a connection between the gut and that heart energy, and this brain and that heart energy. But there's also other connections, community, and your beliefs in a higher power, or your connection to a higher power. Yeah, all these things, meditation, all these things can alter that magnetic field. Are you familiar with heart math?
Yes.
Yeah. So these people are proving all of these things, and they have incredible advanced knowledge of everything that we're talking about.
Yeah, when I was doing my master's, I spent a week there, and they showed me some studies where a young girl and her dog, they would put the heart monitors on them in separate rooms, and their variability would not be coherent or synced up. And when the girl laid with the dog and they connected and she pet it, they both relaxed, their heart energies would sync. Their electrical heart patterns would sync. And it's beautiful how I think we do that as humans. And your comment on the social connectivity, that's why they say women live longer than men, because they're more social beings, that connection. And so many people don't have that connection. I think that's,
it may sound a little weird to you, but one of the things that I watch on TV are these programs, these crime programs like 48 Hours and Dateline, and over and over and over, you see people whose a loved one was murdered or abducted or whatever, or kidnapped, and their moms or their sisters, they know it. They know the moment that happens, right? So that is also a part of the heart connection, right? And this all these invisible functions that we have that we're not very familiar with, but we see examples of it in life every day.
I've had several twins as clients, and they seem to have a connection that even others don't, that they kind of know when something's going on with the other. And you hear too many of those anecdotal stories for it not to be real. There's just no way that it's not some type of heart connection like that.
Every time throughout my life, whenever I had a problem that, that I was suffering about, or I would get a call from my mom out of the blue. Hey, what's up? Are you okay? She wouldn't call me for months, but she would call me the day that I was feeling really down. Go explain it.
Yeah, well, I think we all have that capability, but some people have it smothered by negative experiences, toxicity. They don't allow it. They don't trust it. They don't believe in it, and they don't allow it to manifest. Do you think that's true too?
Oh, 100%. Everybody has that ability and that function. Some people are more in tune with it, aware of it, or as you say, they're more pure in a way because there's so much interference, and they're able to listen to it.
So short of going to India and doing the work you did there, how can some of our viewers gain some insight just themselves? Is there a breathing practice you share with your clients? Is there kind of a message you let them find their own way? How do we help people just get a little bit closer to that space?
Well, again, everybody's different, and for me, it's easier to evaluate and see if there's anything I can give somebody when I am in their presence, right? Just in a podcast to talk about it generally, the only thing that I can come up with is find a way in which you can meditate. And meditation may mean many different things for many different people, right? But just start by doing either a breathing exercise, and not exercise, just really actually becoming aware of your breath is one technique of meditation that works. Or just putting your attention on your body. Like, for example, right now we're speaking, right? And you're listening to me and you're nodding and you're thinking about what I'm saying and interpreting and understanding it and relating it to other things in your life. But what if I ask you right now, as we speak, to put some of your attention also on both your feet? So feel your feet from inside. Feel the temperature, the humidity, feel your feet touching the floor, feel the shoe around your feet. Continue feeling your feet and notice how, as you split your attention between what I'm saying and your feet, your state already changed.
Mm-hmm, it did.
You took a deep breath, your shoulders went down, right? So even if it's just feeling your feet at any given point, many times I tell people when I go into an important meeting and I feel a little bit nervous about the outcome and what's going to be happening. When I enter the room, I try to remember to feel my feet, right? And so people say, but I know, but it doesn't make sense in a way. It's counterintuitive because if you're making an effort to feel your feet, you're not going to be aware of all the things that you have to say. But it's actually the other way around because it frees you. What are you doing when you're feeling your feet? You're activating all this nervous system that goes into your feet and goes back into your brain, right? So you are putting your attention in your feet. Your feet are always here right now, are always present. You're thinking maybe in the past, in the future, associations, but your feet are always present. So when you put your attention on your feet, you're anchoring some of your attention in the present. So you're becoming more present. And not only you free yourself from all the fears and the things that are running on you and confusing you from what you can come up with in that meeting, you're also generating this energy of presence that will affect the person that's interviewing you. and it will calm the person down. And you both will become, by one person becoming more present, the other person becomes more present just by resonance, just by all these fields of energy that we generate. So it ends up being something incredible, right? So
Great.
That's just a simple thing that I tell people to do. And many people report back, whoa, it was incredible. And they continue to use it, long term.
Well, I think so many of us are distracted up here that's one technique to get us grounded.
Yes.
And
yes.
Having your feet
grounded, becoming present, same thing.
I had a husband and wife yesterday, and she does yoga 3 days a week. She's really into health, really into nutrition, and he doesn't really want to hear about it. So I said, do me a favor, put your right hand on your belly and take a big breath. And he went, and I said, okay, let's try it again, but try to push your hand out and not let your shoulders move. And it took him a while to get it. And then he eventually did. And I said, guess what? You just meditated. You just did biofeedback. And he looked at me funny and said, wow, it's that easy. So I asked him to do it 3 big belly breaths before every meal. And so he's now going to develop a meditation practice, a deep breathing practice. It's that simple. And this is a guy that would never do anything. He'd never go to a yoga class. He'd never do a breathing strategy.
People get intimidated by the word meditation, right? Because, oh my God. And a lot of people are intimidated, and a lot of people rightly so, because they teach you to close your eyes and not think. But when people close their eyes and get quiet, they actually become aware of how crazy our minds are. So it's kind of scary, and then they say, no, meditation is not for me, right? So yeah, it's such a simple example like you said, or the one that I mentioned about feeding your feet, and it can be the same with any part of your body, right? Yeah. Those are simple things that have a great impact.
I like the feet one because it just worked on me. It definitely helped me change my focus and feel more present with you.
I saw it.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, Alejandro, you have this beautiful energy about you. The way you communicate with everyone, I can feel it in the video. I've felt it in your presence. I really appreciate you being here and talking with me. And really the work you're doing is so powerful and changing so many people. If any of our viewers want to connect with you or learn more about the work you're doing, how do they find you? Where would you recommend they go search to learn more about the work you're doing?
Well, a good way to start is to read one of my books. I've put out 3 books: Clean Gut, and Clean Eats. Clean Eats is just a recipe book, but it's interesting. I'm writing a 4th book now, Clean 7. It's going to be a 7-day program. And then I have my company, which is this amazing company that not only provides the necessary tools for a 21-day program, and soon we're coming up with a 7-day program as well, but also has the best support on the planet. So, and that's a clean program.
Do.
That's a cleanprogram.com. So that's those are two easy ways to get in touch with my work.
You've done a great job to combine this support with the plan. And I think that's why so many people do so well, and you hear from people all over the world.
Yeah. Well, I'm very proud of my team.
Great. Well, Dr. Alejandro Junger, I thank you so much for spending your time with us, and I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Mark, and please come visit me when you come to LA.